Hello, hello, Emily from the Joy of Coding here, and I am super excited to talk to you guys today. We have an awesome video planned, and I just can't wait to share it with you guys. If you have questions, please feel free to post in the comments. I love getting to see your comments and answer your questions live, so don't hold back, don't hesitate. So, today, what we're talking about is we're really focused on how to avoid tutorial overload. All right. So, and I know this is true of so many of you who are trying to really work to become six-figure software developers. That sometimes, you go down that path of learning and you can't stop, right? And it's just like this rabbit hole. I've heard it called tutorial overload, tutorial hell, right? It just there's so many times that this can happen. And so for me, it looks like I'm down the rabbit hole. I'm trying to figure something out, and I just can't stop learning. I just go and I go and I go, and it's like tunnel vision. And so in this live, I'm going to share with you 3 simple tips that you can use to avoid tutorial hell and how to learn more effectively to become that six-figure software developer that you're looking to become. So what does this look like for me? Like, let me start like really practically. For me, tutorial hell, and to be honest, overwhelming anything when I'm learning anything new, I start off, and if you've been in this space for a while, my style is I learn with a stack. What does that mean? So if you're in programming, you may have heard of a stack before, but if you haven't heard of that in the programming context, we all know what a stack is, right? So let me just show you for a second. Okay, I got a stack of notebooks, right? Okay, so when I start learning, I got more notebooks. I'm ready. So when I start trying to do something, I start off with one thing. This is my priority. This is what I'm trying to learn. And then as I dive in, I get distracted. Has this ever happened to anybody? You can like it, post in the chat, whatever you like. Okay, so I start learning some more. Oh wait, but I want to check out this on the internet. And then this. And this and this, right? And then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, where'd my day go? I've been learning all of these things, but not getting anywhere and not finishing. This is how I work. Please, if this is how you work too, let me know in the chat. And the thing is that not all of these things are priorities for what I'm actually trying to know, right? So these are all the things I'm trying to learn. This is my stack of learning. So I'm like on the internet, I'm in the rabbit hole. Yeah, thanks Arthur, you're probably, yeah, for sure. Yes, I totally get that. But the thing is, so now, I don't know about you guys, but for me, these aren't all programming concepts, right? These are not all productive things to learn for being a six-figure software developer. This might be, ooh, I want to look into this book on Amazon or get this new thing for my house. Yeah, okay, that one can go to the side. That's not appropriate. This one could be, oh, let's plan a vacation for my family. Yeah, no, okay, that's easy. So when I get, eventually I wake up and I realize that I'm here, right? I realize that I'm hiding behind this rabbit hole of stuff. Okay, so whenever I wake up and recognize it, like that's the first step, is recognizing that you're in this space and you want to stop. So what I usually do, it depends on when I wake up. If I started in the morning and this is lunchtime, what I'll do in the afternoon is I'll think, okay, which ones were not priorities? Okay, let me just move. Okay, this is like Amazon and vacation hunting. Okay, I just move those to the side. They can wait for later. But then these might actually be legit learning tasks, right? Oh, I need to learn this, how to use templates in the Django backend. I want to learn better how React promises work, or I want to learn whatever it is, right? Okay, which one is the priority? If it's the middle of the day, I can sometimes just kind of focus and power through. But the problem is the priority I started out with in my day is at the bottom of the stack. And so which one am I going to miss out on? The priority. So once I recognize that this has happened, now I have to stop myself. Perhaps I power through these really quickly and I just jot down what would my next steps be in this space. Is this the priority right this moment? Maybe not. Okay, let me write it down. have a notebook, have a Google Doc, whatever it is for you, and just jot down where you are and what your next steps would be on that learning path. Because sometimes, I don't know about you guys, what happens for me is really what I'm doing is avoiding this one. That's ultimately what's happening. I've just stacked all this stuff that I think I need to learn, but I don't actually need to learn. It's not actually that necessarily that important. It could be, but not necessarily. And I'm delaying the one that's truly most important to transform my learning and help me move forward. So what I need to do is offload these. Just take notes on what I was trying to learn and what my next step would be, where I would go. I put it to the side. Put it to the side, and I get to this one. Okay? Or whatever that these are random notebooks I have. So I really want to get to my priority learning, and that's where I want to dive in. So the first step is like recognizing that I'm down the rabbit hole so that I can make changes, right? Say day-to-day goals over week to week. Yeah. So, okay, this totally goes into planning a little bit, and I'm going to share some more tips on how to do this, but just to answer Arthur's question, what I've started doing for myself, because I find it really easy to make myself a to-do list that is so long I never get to the end. And one of the things I've recognized for myself is that finishing is really, really important. Like having that sense of accomplishment. So when I have this stack of overwhelm in front of me, well, here you go, played it up for you, just for you, right? When I have this stack of overwhelm in front of me, I'm not able to effectively plan because I'm just so overwhelmed with what I have to do. And so it comes down to priorities. What is my priority? What is most important? So the way I tackle this is I've started blocking out time in my schedule for areas of responsibilities that I have. So as for a six-figure software developer, you might have a priority area of learning, you might have a priority area of delivering, right? As a business owner, my priority areas look a little bit different, but I keep separate to-do lists for them, and they still get way too long. Like, I've almost stopped keeping to-do lists because I make them way too long and I never get through them. So what I do is when I sit down for my learning time, like, what's the most important thing for me to learn right now? And I don't worry about the rest of it, right? I say, what's the most important thing for me to make progress on? And I focus there. That helps me cut some of this out a little bit. Not completely, because, while you're learning, you may get on different tracks, right? But that's one of the things that I've started doing. And so it's less about I must do this and this and this and this, but more focused on progress, on finishing, on delivering something, like meeting that goal, not necessarily a general purpose learning goal. And I'm going to share with you some tips on how you guys can do that and really focus your attention, so that when you are prioritizing, it's intentional, right? That you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, like that your learning has context. That, I think, is the key to avoiding the overwhelm and the tutorial hell is having that context. So for me, it's like a stack. And as soon as I catch myself going down this rabbit hole, it does take some discipline and willpower to be like, nope, put the brakes on, stop. Let me look into something else for sure. And then I have to figure out, well, which ones are the priorities. And it could be that your priorities change as you learn, and that's okay. That's why we want to focus on what's the priority. What is the most important thing for us to do and accomplish? And it could be, like, for example, planning out this Facebook Live that I'm giving you today, or it could be learning React Promises, or it could be actually implementing a feature in your portfolio project, or whatever project you're working on. So whatever that priority is, making progress on it, finishing that, and being satisfied with that, and not thinking about all the other things that you didn't do, but focusing on what you did accomplish. Even if you weren't ultimately successful, focus on what you learned, right? So part of learning is actually failing in coding, right? We need to experiment, we need to try things, and they might not work all the time, and that's okay. But one of the things we want to try and do is learn how to be okay with that. And I think, let's see, Arthur's used time blocks rather than to-do list. Good, awesome. I agree. That totally works for me too. Thank you, Arthur, for sharing that. I love it. So that's kind of where I am. I still end up overwhelmed occasionally. I try to bound it by keeping my to-do list and my priorities really, really targeted and short. And you don't have to worry about picking the wrong priority. Okay? Like, let me be clear. Because, like, life is happening all around us all the time. And if you, let's say you pick the wrong priority and you spend your time over here, well, somewhere in your life, something is going to pop up to point you in the right direction. Oh, I don't need to do this. I need to go over here and do this. Now, as long as you're not pivoting and changing like every hour, right? Like, so you don't get anywhere. You want to focus on finishing and progress, right? It's okay to switch and to find and to let kind of life around you direct you. Like, you will find your path. That doesn't need to be a question. There's not really a wrong way to do this. Will it take more time? Yes, right? If you choose correctly, it's not about right and wrong. It's not about correct. If you choose optimally, right? There's many choices. There's many things you could learn. If you choose the optimal thing to learn, you will get where you're trying to go faster. This is how we learn. But the first time you're trying this, it might not go smoothly. It might fail a little bit. As Arthur said, failure is part of success, and you're absolutely right. So we don't have to worry about that so much, right? But we want to make sure we're reflecting and learning on our experience. And that's a really key, important part of the process, is that we're actually tracking, okay, I think I need to learn about React promises. I'm trying this approach out. Was I able to meet my end goal? Yes or no? So you have to have a way to assess success. So how are we going to figure out what the context of our learning is and how to know when we've learned enough? I think really what tutorial hell comes down to is, when have you learned enough? And so to kind of back up a little bit, we're kind of trained and conditioned in school to learn for learning's sake. But if you kind of shift your focus to learning like for life, we learn for specific purposes. Like, I learned to walk so I could go across the room, like as a child. I learned to talk so I can make my needs known to my parents. Like, in life, the school of life, as it were, we're learning for a specific purpose, for a reason. And so when we're learning to become six-figure software developers, it's no different. We want to learn with purpose. The only time it may be okay to learn without purpose is on the tech interview, because that's basically a final exam, which is school, right? So right now, just in case you don't know, if you're looking to become a six-figure software developer, the current state of the practice for screening candidates for entry-level positions is something called a tech interview, where it's kind of like a final exam in a class. It usually takes about 3 to 4 hours. It's usually a coding activity. They may be testing your knowledge of data structures and algorithms, but it's really an exam, which is school, right? The true test of being able to program and become a six-figure software developer is, can you deliver working software? Like, at the end of the day, that's what six-figure software developers do. They deliver software that works in a team, collaborating with others, for a client who's paying them for that service, right? So if we want context and we want to focus our learning the way we do with the rest of life, and we didn't find learning to walk overwhelming, we just did it. Riding a bike, we just did it until we could. Reading, writing, all of these really important life skills, we did them because we needed to. We wanted the end result. School is one of the only places where we sometimes have artificial learning tasks, and we learn for the sake of learning. So what we want to try and do is shift our understanding and our focus for becoming a six-figure software developer, and focus our learning on a concrete task. So the way I recommend that we focus on concrete tasks is actually having a project that we're working on. And I think the ideal way to get a project is to just find someone who is willing to either serve as a user, or even someone who's a professional who has thought of some custom software that they'd like. I'll be honest. You know, I worked in academia for 12 years, and I would often help find software projects for my students to work on with actual clients that would give them feedback. They were free. They worked for free in the college setting. Now inside the Joy Oconee Academy, the clients pay. So there's, you know, it's a little bit different. But when you say, hey, I want to build you some custom software, would you be willing to meet with me once or twice a month for the next 3 to 6 months so that I can deliver this to you? Most people are like, yes, I have an idea for custom software. Like, this usually isn't a barrier. I think what's a bigger challenge is finding a team to work on. And there's other parts of the process that can be challenging to do on your own, but finding someone who's willing to serve as a user for custom software, usually not that hard. You could even be your own user, but I do recommend finding someone else because they may tell you things that you wouldn't see yourself. And so that can help really deepen your learning experience. But that's my recommendation for a concrete task is find a project. You only need, it's about, in terms of a portfolio and experience, one really deep project is going to be worth way more than 100 super tiny projects that showcase what you've learned. Do it deeply because you're going to learn so much of this process that you can't actually Google for, that there's not a course for, or you can't just go on Udemy or YouTube and find a 20-hour course on some of these things. So, but getting that experience of actually delivering working software, that is what is so important. And so that's what I recommend people use for a concrete task. When you're just getting started, your concrete tasks could be small projects like sorting a list of numbers or finding the minimum in a list of 100 numbers or something really, really small. And that's fine to get you started. But at the end of the day, you want to work yourself up eventually to actually delivering on a software project for sure. One of the challenges in working on a big project is figuring out how to break things down. How do you split these high-level tasks into smaller chunks? And so from that perspective, it can be a little bit more challenging to dive in. And so in that situation, if you're really starting completely from scratch, that's going to be a place where having a mentor or a community you can go to ask for support might be helpful, because there's a couple things that you actually can't Google. Just out of curiosity, for anyone that's watching, has anyone ever found something that they haven't been able to Google? Right? Like, Google is an amazing tool in a programmer's toolbox, but has anyone ever found that there's things that they couldn't Google? So sometimes process things are hard to Google. Sometimes decisions, pros and cons. Programming is both an art and a science. When we're on the art side, where you could go this way or this way, and how do you weigh the choices between this choice and that choice? Those are things that can be hard to Google. Sometimes you can find a tutorial that weighs the pros and cons for things that are really well understood. But in software, the technological landscape is changing rapidly. Like, there's not always a tutorial out there that gives you that answer. Yeah, Arthur, awesome, thanks. And if you have any examples, please feel free to share them for sure. But for example, how to split high-level tasks into smaller ones. How to go from an English statement like sorting a list of numbers and figuring out what code elements you need, what tools from your toolbox. I call them the 7 basics. If you're watching this and you're interested in knowing more about those, you haven't heard me talk about them yet, I do have a free printable on the 7 basics of programming. Right? Which of your 7 basics, the tools in your toolbox, do you use to sort a list of numbers or to find the minimum? Exactly, Adrian. Yes, I love the carpenter metaphor. I use this all the time, right? The 7 basics are your tools in your toolbox. Thinking like a carpenter. For example, why learn Java if Python and R are better for data analytics? Yes, right? Some of these higher level questions, toolbox and learning the craft. Exactly, right? That's exactly it. And so sometimes, Google will have a lot, but it only has what someone has actually sat down to write. And some of these things aren't as cut and dry. They're not as black and white. And even when you do Google, how do you know the background of the person who wrote it? Are they a 6-figure software developer? Or are they someone like you just trying to learn, right? Like, there's a lot that goes into finding resources on Google. So we have Google tutorials, we have Stack Overflow, and that's actually a great place to put questions. You do want to be prepared. Sometimes on the internet, when people are anonymous, they're not as kind as they might be face-to-face. So just as long as you're ready for that. Or if you can find a mentor, right? And there's a lot of groups out there that you can join. Joy of Coding is one of them, right? Please post your questions. We'll be happy to answer them. Arthur had a great point. Not being able to explain what the problem is to put it into a browser. Yes. So that's a really great question as well. I'm trying to think of some guidelines. So big picture, I think that comes down to vocabulary some of the vocabulary can be learned, but having a good resource for that, having a place where you can look, or a mentor who can help like guide you on that query formation as well. And really what we're looking for are unique words that will help. Like, you've got all of Google here. Are there some unique words you can use to kind of spotlight and highlight what you're looking for? And you're right, it does take time to get the lingo enough that you can articulate the question, right? And as a beginner, it can be so challenging. So at the end of the day, what I find the fastest path, because we're here inside the Joy of Coding because we want the fastest path to becoming a six-figure software developer. What I have found in my experience, the fastest path is a dialogue, right? Where you actually have a mentor who's willing to answer your questions. And to be honest, that is how I learned a lot of my basics. Is I was in a graduate student lab. You don't have to be in a grad lab, right? But I was in an environment where I had people around me who would be willing to answer my questions and just drop what they were doing and answer them, which was amazing. I also had to be willing to ask, right? I had to get comfortable enough with the environment to ask, which isn't always the case. So, what you really want to find, though, I think the fastest path is someone who knows about this space and can help guide you on what questions to ask, what resources to look for. And again, having a resource when you can't Google. If you don't have that mentor, hey, post your question inside the Joy of Coding Academy, our Facebook group. We're happy to help, right? If you want more of that all the time, reach out. Let's set up a time to chat about if joining the Joy of Coding Academy is right for you. But having someone that you can ask, because there are things that Google can't answer effectively. It's suboptimal. It's not optimal, right? Can you Google them? Sure, you can Google anything. Doesn't mean you're going to get meaningful information back, as Arthur is pointing out. And a couple other tricks on the Google front. Trying a query out and just reading the titles, and then trying to figure out, what you really want to be Googling for is very helpful. And uniquely identifying words that are going to be unique. Like, for example, today I tried to Google celery, which is a test automation framework that we're thinking about using on the software side in our software company. And so I Googled celery testing, and all I got was like dietary information, right? Okay, I had the right word. It was super unique to what I was looking for, but it wasn't unique relative to how that word is used elsewhere. And so that can be a challenge in figuring out how to identify the resources we're looking for. So having someone you can turn to and ask questions of, even if it's Stack Overflow, right, or another Facebook community, or Joy of Coding, the Facebook group, whatever it is, having someplace you can go to ask those questions is super, super helpful. Awesome. So, and Adrian's speaking up, missing SQL skills that weren't taught in college that are needed for the job. Yeah, there can sometimes be a huge disconnect between what courses are offering, whether those are in a college setting or online, and what industry is looking for. And that's where having a concrete task is going to help, because it helps you kind of cut through the theory to what's most important in practice. And the theory is still valid. I have my PhD. I went all day long, all in on theory. Like, I get it. Theory matters. But when you're trying to actually move and make something happen in the world, the amount of theory you need, it's like this much theory and so much more application, right? And you want that full knowledge so that you can position the theory that you understand and actually use it to solve problems, right? That's ultimately what we're trying to do, is we're trying to solve problems for people. We're trying to build software that helps people do cool things, right? At the end of the day. All right, so I'm probably going to talk even more about what you can't Google in another Facebook Live. So I don't want to steal that, because I just think there is so much here. So if you have ideas and questions on that, please don't hesitate to reach out as well. And so what do we talk about so far? How do we avoid tutorial overwhelm? How do we avoid tutorial hell? We're focusing on concrete tasks in a project, right? And we're learning how to split up high-level tasks into smaller chunks. We're thinking through who has the solution, who has the knowledge to what we're looking for. Maybe we can ask them. Maybe we can Google, right? Especially in the beginning when you're working with the basics, you can Google a lot of those things and you will get good answers, because a lot of people are looking for that solution. Error messages, awesome to Google for. But some of these choices like, well, should I learn this language or that language? Or should I go this way or that way? Some of those decisions can be harder to Google for. There's not necessarily a tutorial with exactly your situation, your context. Stack Overflow can also be another great way. So, okay, so we're going to avoid overwhelm by working on a concrete project and breaking into concrete tasks. And ideally, we're going to find a mentor who's going to help us find the information we need to keep moving forward, right? There's going to be somebody that we know that's the fast path to help us there. And then what do we do? Right? We still want to avoid this stack of overwhelm that we might have on our plates in front of us. And so the other thing I recommend is that you actually set time limits. Okay, so my recommendation is for these questions, like, where can I go for this information? What are the possible solutions for the task that's in front of me? Brainstorm everything and write it down, but not as a to-do list, as a place to look for ideas and to help prioritize. Okay, so brainstorm your list. Okay, let's say React promises. I could do this, 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 and this, and write them all down. Okay, I want to learn React promises because I'm trying to integrate an API and I have to use it. Okay, so I have a concrete task, I have a learning goal, and I have that ties to that concrete task, and I have all these possible ways of achieving that result. It could be learning promises, it could be looking at some other projects, right? I have a list of action items I could potentially take, actions I could take. Okay, now we want to start working on our ability to estimate, right? And time ourselves, because some of these solutions will work, some won't. We know this. It's just how technical world works. Or some of them will work for us really fast and efficiently, some will not. So we want to be ready with a couple different solutions so we can time ourselves and say, okay, I've hit the limit. I'm not any closer. When should I move on to my next task, right? My next solution, okay? So we want to estimate how long we think these solutions will take. We can kind of start thinking about, well, which solutions are just like a Band-Aid to get us through and which solutions are like really fixing it. We can kind of bring that information in depending on how much time we have before we want to achieve our goal. If it's at the very end of the day, I might just want to get it working so I can move on tomorrow. If it's at the beginning of the day and I have some time, okay, I might dive in deeper into something and kind of see, well, how should it really be solved? But there's a risk, right? We don't want to just go down that rabbit hole forever. We do need to kind of dive into learning, but we want to bound how long that takes. So my recommendation is to set a time limit and just kind of keep track. Okay, I'm going to go a half hour, 20 minutes, an hour, no more than an hour. I would not go more than an hour without reassessing where you are. That's my rule of thumb when I teach people, is that if you are not making forward motion in an hour, stop, because there's going to be a faster way for you to do that with just a little bit more information. That would be a time to reach out to your mentor or go to one of the other options on your list to try those. And then track it. Here's the thing. Don't just switch and pivot all the time. Track it and reflect at the end of the day before you stop working, or if you prefer at the beginning of the next day before you start. I like to do it the day of personally, just kind of as my finisher. Reflect. How did that process go? Right? Did you take too long down a path that didn't work? What ultimately worked for you? Right? And start kind of paying attention to that, because at the end of the day, it's about your process, not necessarily the end result, right? The end result is a means for us to understand our process and have confidence in it, because that's what actually will carry you through as a six-figure software developer. So we want to have a list of a couple different solutions, try one, try the one that we think is going to get the best results the fastest, and then if that doesn't work, go from there. So for example, a few weeks ago, I was working on something where, the layout, the front end layout of this one web page wasn't working properly for the app we were building. And so I tried to fix it. I tried a solution that online said would work, and like some website, I Googled it, and they're like, oh, you need grid or something like that. And then I tried it and it didn't work at all. Okay, didn't solve my problem. All right, and so I Googled the next solution. Oh, people said you need like post or page, or I'm sorry, it was a couple weeks ago. I think it was at a live in June, so I don't remember anymore what the solution was. But you need Flexbox, you need this. I tried the next solution, worked like a charm. Totally cool. So you can also, as you gain knowledge, you can continue brainstorming solutions and Googling them, right? Like you don't have to have a full list right off the bat. You can just start. It helps you make decisions, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is make smarter decisions about how we prioritize and use our time. This is critically important as six-figure software developers who are always learning in a world where technology is constantly evolving. Arthur asked a question, can I give an example of learning concepts rather than syntax? Okay, cool. So again, I think, Arthur, here, what I would say, this is a great question. I do have resources I can share with you if you're interested for like learning syntax, but really we want to focus on some of those higher level concepts. You're absolutely right there. I think really trying to go out and focus on that concrete task and learning enough of the concepts to solve that task. I think that is where it comes in. It's not necessarily about the syntax of solving the task. It's about, okay, can I take one step back from the task itself? So maybe it's making a new view for Django. Okay, what am I trying to make that view for? Can I make that a more general question I could potentially Google for? Or, I'm just trying to think of examples here that might make sense there. But really, it's not necessarily or looking for that coding template. I know a lot of times I talk about coding templates and learning how to adapt them. So trying for the concrete task you're looking for, is there someone else who's already done it that you can just borrow from? How did they do it? For example, one of the things I tried to do in the past couple months was integrate Stripe payment processing, so credit card processing, into a system. And so I just looked for a tutorial that used the technologies I was using that got it working. And they had an open source GitHub repository I could look to, and they explained how they did it. So that's often what I'll use. Again, it does come down to Googling and picking the right query, but you get to work with Google on that, right? You get to work with Google and see if you're getting the results that you're looking for. And so, changing the words that you use to find that example. So there is a place for tutorials, but we want to avoid just like that rabbit hole where we're going in and we're learning and we're learning and we're learning and we're learning for learning's sake, not to achieve a task, right? And then sometimes we don't have to learn all of the concepts all at once. There's a balance here. I think, Arthur, what your question is getting at is this deeper balance between when do we decide to learn to solve the problem only versus when do we invest time to learn bigger picture. So to give you an example, one of our interns was working on creating an admin panel and working very closely with the Django backend. And so she got a lot working really, really fast, like in a week. And then she realized, to do any more with this and make it any more powerful, I actually need to sit down and understand how the Python Django backend works. So she didn't start with the book, right? She didn't start with reading a book about how Python Django does administration, right? It might be just a chapter. She didn't start there. She started doing it. And then she realized she couldn't keep doing without knowing this deeper knowledge. So I guess what I would say, Arthur, there's no hard or fast rules here, but what I would say is letting the problem and your ability to progress guide you so that you know when it's worth that time investment to go deeper. It's kind of like, let's say we have a leak. You have a leaky pipe. And I could use like a Band-Aid, or I guess duct tape would be like the equivalent Band-Aid. But I know that solution has a time limit. It's not going to work forever, going back to our construction metaphors. And that is totally true of learning as well, right? Like, okay, let me just learn enough to move this forward. I'm not going to fully understand it. That would be a time where you want to make a note, right? I might want to look into this more further later. But here's the difference between tutorial help. It's not doing it right now. There's a pause where you're noting that, yes, you could invest your learning time in this thing that would help you with this task, but allowing the next task to point you that it's time to invest. So sometimes I might wait. I might just solve it right in the moment, right? If it's a one-time thing, no biggie. But if you find that you're consistently, more than once, being asked to rely on this knowledge, it might be your environment kind of giving you that feedback that it's time to deepen your learning on that thing. But I think what can sometimes happen in a tutorial hell situation is that we're doing all the things that we could possibly learn all at once and we're getting overwhelmed. When really it's about prioritizing. And I know I need to do this more as well. It's about prioritizing what's most important right now to move us forward. And that's what we're really focusing on. So investing our learning on what we actually need to know right now to solve the problem, right? That's where that problem becomes, that concrete task that you're working on becomes so important, because you always have choices to do the Band-Aid, to duct tape the pipe versus replacing the pipe, right? Like if there's a leaky pipe, right? There's always more to learn. So how do we know when to stop? It's almost like knowing when to stop is it's just as important as knowing what to learn and being able to Google for it and find those learning resources. But I just don't think people think about it in that way, that when you're in tutorial hell, it's because we fail to set priorities and we don't know when to stop. So it might take setting a timer and having it, like setting it on your phone, like, okay, I'm going to give this 30 minutes. And if I can't figure out, then I'm going to reassess and reevaluate. Is it worth 30 minutes more? Am I close? Do I feel like this is working? Do I see positive movement forward, progress? Or is it about, this isn't getting me anywhere. Maybe I need to rethink my strategy. And just having those moments where we pause, right? It's not necessarily about knowing the right answer, because again, everyone has their own process, and we're really working on our personal process here. But yeah, I think it's really about recognizing that we need to stop, that we're not being productive, and there might be a more productive use of our time, and not just going, right? Not just stacking things up more and more. Well, maybe I need to learn this, and I'll learn this, and learn this. But head exploding. No, the solution is there. We just haven't found it yet. And that I guess that's another like side thing that I do to help in this situation, is believing that the solution exists, knowing the solution exists. I just haven't found it yet. I find for me that is much more helpful in me being productive than if I'm questioning if the solution exists, if this makes sense. It's a subtle difference. If you guys want, I can always go on a deeper dive onto that. Cool. Awesome. So good. So again, things I want to say, it's okay to stop in the middle of your learning if you recognize that it's not moving you forward. And it could be that it moved someone else forward. That's cool. But you might have seen on a forum, hey, learning about this API is going to help you solve this problem, but it's not working for you. No worries. Everybody's different, right? It's okay to stop in the middle and not finish that. The important thing to finish is the task. Implementing whatever it is you're trying to implement. Delivering the project to whatever user or client you're working on. That's what's important. It's okay to stop in the middle and move on. Abandon ship. You can always go back later, right? Like problem solving is not necessarily a straight line. There are some curves in there because, we're on the hunt. We're like detectives. It's like a good detective story. It's what keeps us coming back for more, right? And don't be afraid to experiment. I know we mentioned this before, and fail, right? It's okay to try something and to not succeed. The key is trying not to repeat that mistake in the future. And so one of the tools that I use for that is to estimate, to time things out. Okay, I think this will take this long. And let's say an hour. And if I get to the end of the hour, I have to reassess. There's two possibilities. One, the solution I'm looking at isn't going to work, and I just spent an hour on it. Or two, I completely underestimated how long this task was going to take, and I'm making good progress. Right? And those are super important things for us to know, right? So we can be better at predicting that in the future. Again, helping us to avoid overwhelm, right? Because if I know I thought a task was going to take me an hour and it actually took me 4, well, now next time I'll know to allow 4 hours, a half a day for that task instead of just an hour. And that'll help me plan out my days better. Again, that goes back to that time blocking that we talked about as well. The bottom line, though, is that, oh, good, Arthur. Thank you for that feedback. I'm so glad. The bottom line is it's not the lack of knowledge that puts learners in tutorial hell. It's a lack of a process for problem solving and confidence in the learner's abilities, right? So if you have confidence that the solution exists, you just haven't found it yet, that's a very different place than if you're uncertain if this is solvable at all, right? Like that's a hard place to solve from. And being open to other possibilities, right? There's always multiple paths, and so you don't have to necessarily solve the problem exactly how you first formulated it. You can pivot. There are other solutions, right? Like we could do it this way or this way. Well, I'm going to go this way. But if this way turns out to not be working, it's okay to stop, to just admit this isn't working for me right now. This is not a good use of my time. And I'm going to pivot. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to do it this way instead. It's totally cool. Nothing wrong with that. But just note it. Just kind of start to learn your own process for problem solving. And that is going to help you so much in becoming a six-figure software developer, for sure. Awesome, awesome. You guys have been amazing. Are there any other questions that I can answer today on this topic of avoiding tutorial overload? Anything like that. I'll kind of recap and give you a chance because I know typing takes a minute. But if you have follow-up questions or suggestions or thoughts, please don't hesitate to post in the chat and I'll come back to them. But just to kind of wrap this up with a bow, like what did we talk about today? We talked about how to avoid tutorial hell, right? How to avoid that rabbit hole where we're learning and learning and learning and learning and it just feels like we're not getting anywhere, right? We're just not making progress, and focusing on finishing so we can actually move forward. To do that, we have to start with a concrete task. Ideally, some kind of a portfolio project. You could be working on an internship project, something concrete that you can be like, yes, I'm achieving this thing. So that it gives you this focus, right? So you can cut out all the learning that you could be doing that's not going to be effective, that's not going to help you. And then, figuring out, is there someone who has the knowledge that you're looking for? Can you just learn from them? That's going to be the fastest path. Now, you could do that through Googling, Stack Overflow. We did discuss today a little bit, we touched on how not everything can be Googled, which is why having a mentor can be so, so valuable. I'm going to talk more about that, I believe, next week. I'm thinking there's like a ton more inside of what can't be Googled. Also, setting time limits, right? So brainstorming a bunch of solutions you could do. You don't have to be married to any one of them. Just because you invested time on one doesn't mean it's the right one. You can pause, you can stop, and you can switch. You can pivot. You can keep Googling, right? You can go back for more solutions, right? There's a lot of choices out there. But the important thing is setting time limits just to wake yourself up. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'll get down this rabbit hole of just like learning, and I don't make progress. So I need a timer for me to kind of a stopping point to be like, nope, stop. So I can reassess and pivot if I need to and change directions. And not being afraid to fail and experiment, right? And the key is learning from that, right? Failing doesn't help us unless we learn from it. So writing things down, like saying, you can even journal. Or log. I tried this approach to solve this problem, and I tried it for 20 minutes and I didn't get anywhere. So I'm trying the next one on my list. Or I tried it for an hour and I'm making progress, but it's going to take me a lot longer, and I'm just going to keep going. I think it's going to take me this much longer. Right? Just kind of noting that down, estimating so you can improve for the future. Because ultimately, in part, some of the overwhelm is because we're not making progress, right? That's why we feel overwhelmed. We're doing all this busy work. It's like a hamster on a wheel, and we're not getting anywhere. We're not moving forward. So ideally, we want to work on our ability to estimate and to plan, because that's going to help us actually set up a series of learning steps that are actually going to help us feel successful and feel confident and help us build and refine our process. Because at the end of the day, it's not lack of knowledge that puts the learner in tutorial hell. It's the lack of a problem-solving process, right? It's not the knowledge, it's the process. And so we want to define our process and also gain our confidence in that process so that we know we can go apply it in any situation. All right. Awesome, guys. Great feedback. Thank you for your questions and your comments. If you have any other comments, please don't hesitate to reach out in the group. Happy to answer them there. If you want to know more about this, about how the Joy of Coding Academy supports learners with mentors and gives people resources to ask questions and support in this, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to chat further. All right. So this is Dr. Emily from the Joy of Coding. And signing off, and I wish you the best of luck, a great week, and happy coding. Take care, guys.